what's actually happening with the climate change stuff.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Glenn. It's great to be here. And I've been covering these for 15 years now. I've been going the one they did in Copenhagen. I've been covering these for New American Magazine. And this one was very interesting because we've got Trump in the White House. And, of course, he actually boycotted the summit. We reached out to the State Department. They told us they deliberately chose not to send anybody. So there was no U.S. delegation for the first time in 30 years of these. And that made for a very interesting situation. Yeah, and a lot of Americans thought that was great, hooray, and a lot of the climate skeptics also thought so. But some of the globalists at the UN conference also said, hey, this is a great opportunity because the United States is still involved in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, but they're not here to obstruct passage of an ambitious deal. So let's do some great stuff, and then when Trump is gone in 3.5 years, we'll impose that on Americans. So obviously Trump card, you could get us out of the UNFCCC. But as of now, they passed a pretty interesting agreement, Glenn. It included mention of a carbon budget. They claim that 4/5 of the CO2 that humans can be allowed to emit has already been emitted. And, of course, the United States and the West, most of that. True story. So India and China get to do the rest, essentially. They passed really a lot of the side agreements. A big group, including a bunch of U.S. allies, passed an agreement on information integrity where they said we need to censor the Internet and censor people who don't agree with us. Pretty remarkable. Brazil and the European Union passed, they created this new system to integrate the carbon markets of the world. And they were very enthusiastic about that. They got in the main agreement a bunch of new metrics and tools for analytics, basically tools for future enforcement of these climate decrees. So a lot happened. And really, I think the strategy for these people, Glenn, is, hey, we've got Trump for 3.5 more years. Let's just keep our heads down. We know that he doesn't believe us. We know the American people don't believe us. So let's just not talk about it too loudly. We'll keep building this climate regime, as they call it, brick by brick, cop by cop. And once Trump is gone, we'll hit the pedal to the metal again.
Wow. So was this a mistake by not showing up?
I don't know. I know some of the people down at the UN summit thought this was a good opportunity for them. But, Trump's not done. I've spoken with people at EPA. I've spoken with people at the State Department who have said that they are seriously considering the possibility of withdrawing from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the 1992 treaty that created the whole process. Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer because Trump has taken really decisive action on this. In fact, before he went into the White House, he said one of the top priorities for the MAGA movement and the United States needs to be to decisively crush this climate hysteria hoax. So he's really serious about it. And if you look at the executive orders he's done, he has taken a chainsaw to this in terms of the funding, in terms of the subsequent agreements. He also has reversed what they call the endangerment finding during Obama's administration. They claimed carbon dioxide, the gas we exhale, is pollution that needs to be regulated under the Clean Air Act. So he's in the process of reversing that. So he seems very serious about stopping this madness, and I don't think he's done yet.
So how far did they get towards their goal of eliminating oil and gas?
Well, this is a funny story. I was on the Arabian Peninsula a couple of years ago, and they managed to get that into the final agreement, which was a huge victory for the most radical elements here. The Rockefeller Front groups like Oil Change International. This was like their crowning achievement, and they couldn't get that reiterated in this year's agreement, I think partly because Trump was pressuring some of the Arab governments not to go along with it. But they're still very serious about getting rid of fossil fuels. But here's the thing, Glenn, and I pointed this out in my cover story after coming back from Dubai, the COP28. When they talk about phasing out fossil fuels, everybody there knows that the communist Chinese and India and the Arab government, they're not going to phase out fossil fuels. Give me a break. They all understand that this is a tool for dismantling the economies of the West, shipping our productive capacity to China. And literally, they got caught. The communist Chinese and the Arab governments got caught at that climate summit in Dubai making oil deals at the summit. And this came out in the mainstream media, in the pro-climate alarm. So it's for the suckers in the West to keep dismantling our economies and shifting our productive capacity to China.
Well, also for the New York Times, I heard this glowing report from the New York Times podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, China was a superstar. Everybody was going to China going, look at how China's leading the world. China's not leading the world. China is doing everything that you're trying to ban. They're doing all of it, and then they're selling you their crap to get you to follow the climate, controls. They're not following any of them.
That's one of the biggest stories and the biggest takeaways for me from this whole thing, Glenn. First of all, it proves that at the very top, these people know the climate thing with the CO2 being pollution is a total fraud. And this dawned on me in Paris. I was there in 2015. Barack Obama promised to slash American CO2 emissions by like 30% in 10 years. The Communist Chinese said they were going to keep increasing theirs for 15 years. If you really believe CO2 is a problem, that's the worst possible thing you could do, because every unit of production in China emits way more CO2. So this is a fraud. The people at the highest levels know it. China emits almost 300% more CO2 than America, and it's rising like a rocket ship. But you would never know it at these climate summits, man. Everybody treats Communist China like they're the world leaders. Some of them will lie and say Communist China is doing a great job. It's truly incredible. Now, I don't begrudge them their CO2 emissions. CO2, as Will Haffer, Trump's climate advisor from the first term, told me, we need more CO2. We should encourage people to make more CO2. It's the gas of life. But to pretend like Communist China is saving the world by building a new coal-fired power plant every year and increasing their CO2 emissions while selling us garbage solar panels and windmills that don't work is to utterly ignore all of the evidence, the whole reality.
Yeah. So tell me the controversy over the Dragon Jaguar Guardian spirit thing. How I mean, is this just a symbol of something, or is this like a golden calf kind of thing?
Well, for me, it was a perfect representation of the spiritual reality of these. And I've gone with a lot of people who work for me, people, other journalists, and I'm not the only one who notices the really dark feeling when you get into these things. It's like, spiritual oppression. And so this year, the CCP unveils this gift. They call it a gift to the people of Brazil. It's supposed to be the official Dragon Jaguar Guardian spirit of the COP30. And I encourage people to look at this image. I mean, if you're hearing us on the radio, you're not going to be able to see it. But you can go to my X account, Alex Newman _JOU. We're going to put it on the cover of the magazine. It's a big, giant leopard, dragon, jaguar thing with big devil horns sticking out the top, holding the whole world in its hands with COP30 emblazoned across the front. And for the Brazilian people, Brazil is a Catholic country. They're famous, of course, for the Christ the Redeemer statue on Mount Corcovado overlooking Rio, which used to be their capital. Brazilian Christians said, hey, Brazil belongs to Jesus Christ, not to your demon, guardian, dragon, devil, spirit, whatever. Get that thing out of our country. So Brazilian Christians were really upset about this. But, this was the official guardian spirit. And for me, it was just a perfect representation of everything that is really going on in the spiritual realm with this whole process.
Oh, my gosh. I'm just looking at it. It is absolutely demonic.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Why would you want that? I mean, we have the golden calf, yes, on Wall Street. Really kind of a bad thing. This is just so clearly not good. Oh, my gosh.
It's a good representation of what's going on. One of the articles I'm writing now is about how they're bringing the religions of the world together to redefine morality in terms of climate and Mother Earth. And we're also watching the repaganization of the West. And that was really on display at this COP. They brought in all kinds of pagan and pantheist and animistic religious groups to pray over Mother Earth. And these were official events, And I've been watching this for years. In Egypt, I was there a couple of years ago for the COP27. They unveiled the new and improved 10 Commandments, where they said we must serve this life-giving, interdependent Earth. There's a very serious religious and spiritual component to this that none of the journalists are seeing. And I think it's because they're all approaching
they never do.
Materialistic worldview. But it's really important.
Yeah. Did you see that Zillow has just removed the climate risk things from their listings? I think it's because they probably got sued because people's houses were dropping in value because they said, oh, that's a climate risk, that house. They just took it off.
Yeah, but they did that in Miami, too. You had some of the municipalities down there saying, oh, our houses are going to be underwater. People said, wait a minute. First of all, that's fake. Second of all, you're destroying our property values, which is going to destroy your tax revenue. What are you people doing? But the reality is, when the polling shows Americans don't believe this stuff. The polling shows less than 1 in 3 Americans is interested in paying even like $10 on their monthly energy bill to stop climate change. So they know from their perspective, the best policy is just to stay quiet, don't say anything, let this thing materialize. And then as they themselves said at this COP and the one before it and the one before that, we're going to get the children. We're going to bring this in through the school. We're going to teach them not just to
so evil.
To take action. It is. They're trying to capture the hearts and minds of our young ones. And that's really the heart of their strategy, because they know the bitter clingers, the older Americans, are not going to go for this stuff.
You follow Alex Newman, Alex Newman _JOU on Twitter. His website is libertysentinel.org. Alex Newman, always good to talk to you, Alex. Thank you for the update. I will tell you that one of the things that, he was just saying, they're hurting the property values and everything else, and the average person knows it's bullcrap. No, here's how you know this is bullcrap. The banks are still writing loans for commercial properties and homes on the coastlines. It would be fiscally irresponsible to do that. They could not do that if they were actually believing that global warming was real. They would have to say, we cannot underwrite any more homes on the coastlines. They're not doing that, are they? Why? Because they know it's fake. Take that one literally to the bank.